What's up, everyone? Welcome back to the Collider Interview Studio at TIFF 2024 at the Cinema Center, brought to you by Range Rover Sports. I'm so excited. I don't mean to play favorites, but I can't help it. Life of Chuck is my most anticipated interview of the film festival, my most anticipated movie of the festival. I'm so excited.
Oh, thank you.
Wow, that's amazing. Yeah.
I can't tell if it's amazing or I just put way too much pressure. I have one question that's going to put so much pressure on you, but it's based on something you said in our press notes, so you kind of teed me up for it.
Damn it.
I'm going to start semi-easy. I want to talk to you a little bit, Mike, about Stephen King adaptations, because you've obviously done quite a few over the years.
Yeah.
First, with Life of Chuck, I am curious, why now for this particular Stephen King adaptation? Is there anything about, the point in your career that you're at, the state of the world, anything at all that made you say, we need a Life of Chuck movie now?
Well, when I first read the short story, it was in early 2020. It was just after the lockdown. It was just as kind of COVID took over the world. And when you experience this story at the very beginning, there's a sense that all of the wheels are coming off, that society itself is falling apart. And as I was reading the story, it resonated with me so powerfully that I questioned whether or not I'd be able to finish it because it felt so bleakly timely. But by the time I got to the end of the story, I was crying, and it was out of joy and hope. And it felt like a movie. This people say this, but this is actually true. It felt like a movie that I felt like I had to make. And a movie that we talked about this when we first spoke about it, that a movie I wanted to exist in the world for my children. And so yeah, this one's a very special one to me.
I adore that short story so much. So very much understand all of that. So my other adaptation question for you is a big two-parter, because again, you've done quite a few. Can you tell me something about your process of adapting Stephen King material that has stayed the same from film to film to film, but then also something about Life of Chuck that called for something different?
Well, I always do it the same way to begin with, which is I get a copy of the book that is just for me to use as a tool to adapt. And I respect the material too much to write inside of the book. So what happens is I write on Post-its and stick them inside, and that makes the book ridiculous. It turns it into this insane prop. But I always, as a King fan, I see so many adaptations. I've lived and died with them and shaken my fist at the screen and then had those Shawshank or Stand By Me moments where it's like, oh my God. So I always try to imagine what would upset me the most as a fan and try very hard not to do that.
I have to follow up. What would upset you most with an adaptation of Life of Chuck that you knew you couldn't do yourself?
Changing the structure.
I like that. That's really not an option. Otherwise,
not an option, but I can see why people might decide to do that.
Okay. I'm glad you stuck to that. Chiwetel, I'm going to come your way now. This is a little bit of a big question about a very specific detail, but Marty is kind of the first one who sees Chuck. So it's a very important establishing point for the story. So what was it like figuring out, I guess, what that needed to feel like for him and look like for the audience?
Well, I think the handy thing is when you're reading the material, you're going through that kind of process anyway. You're like, well, what is this? What is happening? You're kind of like, where is this taking me and why? And it's all quite mysterious and, there's a kind of thrilling element to it. So I think that I kind of wanted to sort of think about that, that it's kind of out of the blue. It's sort of, as it becomes more repeated in Marty's experience, it becomes stranger and stranger. We end up having a kind of conversation about it and realizing that there's something that is ubiquitous about this man. And I just think I just sat in that, really. I found it so intriguing as a kind of way into this story. It's so sort of brilliant.
All right, so Karen, looping your character in now too. I'll toss this to both of you. How much are you two thinking about your characters being a product of Chuck?
Interesting question. I didn't think of it that way at all, because I think we just sort of needed to play the truth of the situation and not be like, I also don't want to give away any spoilers. How do I answer this? But no, I wasn't thinking about that. I was thinking about just, the reality of this situation, which is so crazy and outlandish, but dealing with the end of the world, or maybe it's not so crazy and outlandish. Oh, that's quite sad. Sorry, I'm having an ADHD moment where my thoughts are shooting all over the place. But no, I just tried to play the truth of the situation and didn't try to kind of sit outside of it and be like, is this a figment of anybody's imagination?
Same for you?
Yeah, I think maybe it sort of the context of it played a little more for me. I think in the sense that there's something that's so interesting about knowing that there's maybe something more going on. Just as a character, and so sort of trying to play absolutely the truth of it, but with that sense, I think maybe like behind the eyes that this can't be the limit of this experience. There's something else happening within the context of this, which actually follows the story a little bit as well. It's an investigation that's happening at the same time.
To dig into the relationship between your characters now, Karen, I feel like you know this about me. I love making actors give each other flowers. So can you each tell me something about the other as a scene partner that you appreciated and helped you tap into something in your own character that you might not have been able to reach without them?
I'll go first. He is an incredible actor. I just sort of found myself not needing to do anything in terms of my own acting because all I had to do was just listen to him and be observant. And I was like, I'm getting everything that I need here and more. And you reduced me to tears. And I really didn't have to try. So thank you for making everything very easy for me.
I thank you. I can only say, exactly the same thing. You're a phenomenal actress, and I was, because the first thing that we had to do was quite complex. It was quite a tricky, there's a lot of dialogue, and it's like, and just having a scene partner that's able to kind of walk you through it, and connect. I think it was our first day. I feel like it was the first day that we did anything with the phone call. Yeah. And it was like and all of that history, all of the dynamics, all of the sort of the hopes, the crushed dreams, the problems, all of that stuff. And having somebody who's just, on the other end of the phone, and you were upstairs, I think, when we were shooting.
In a little bedroom,
and just all communicated through the voice, all communicated, all of the sort of history and story. And I just thought it was absolutely wonderful. So I really thank you for that. It was really beautiful.
I can't wait to see this all leap to life on screen later.
They are amazing together.
I bet.
They are amazing together.
I have very high hopes. Literally every single person in this ensemble is amazing. So Tom, I'm going to throw a somewhat similar question your way because Life of Chuck also has like a bit of an anthology feel. So you essentially get to work with a whole new set of actors. So can you highlight someone who gave you just what you needed and maybe helped you exceed your own expectations for your work in the film?
Well, I probably just immediately pick two people, if I may, which is Annalise Basso and Taylor Gordon, and I feel like we come as a three. That there is whatever I contribute to this film is comes in tandem with them. We are a trio in a way, and it's just because there's a moment in the film. Obviously, it's called The Life of Chuck, and I'm playing Chuck. And there's a specific moment in the middle of the film which is very spontaneous and very surprising for himself and for everyone else. And it expresses a part of him that perhaps doesn't get expressed very often. And that moment is really crystallized by the three of us. It's somehow... so Taylor Gordon is playing the drums. She's playing the drums on the street, and Chuck Krantz is on his way to a conference, and he stops and puts his briefcase down and starts moving to the beat of those drums. And then as he starts moving, he spots a face in the crowd who seems to be enjoying it as much as he is. And that's Janice, played by Annalise. And the three of us kind of do this. We are a triangular constellation of music and dance and joy. So I couldn't have done it without them.
It's a beautiful beat in the story, and I have a feeling it's going to be the same on screen here. I'll toss this question to both of you about that. It's one of the most iconic scenes in the entire short story. So what was it like adapting it? Because I guess Stephen King is very specific with his movements in terms of how that dance operates. So is it about sticking as close to the text as possible, or is there any additional choreography?
Oh, no. In this particular case, it was about finding what created the most joy. And what was fascinating to watch from my perspective was that Tom and Annalise and Taylor and our incredible choreographer, Mandy Moore, went off together to not only create the dance, but to create the music. And it all happened, it was a collaboration from the drums to the choreography. And so I got to step back and just watch what you guys built. And when they finally came to set with this worked out, having let it evolve and grow and react to their instincts and what brought joy out for them, I remember how much my face hurt from smiling the first time I watched them perform it. And I knew that it was going to work because of that.
I love that. I didn't realize. You probably just saw me recognize the fact that you worked with Mandy on that.
Yeah.
Like
She was amazing.
What a perfect pairing.
She was amazing. And
she's the best.
And Taylor also, like, in the story, and certainly in the short story in your screenplay, there's this sense of the drummer being like incredibly expert and classically trained, but as someone who has dispatched that classical training to find the soul of her own rhythm. But so inside her skill is this capacity to play, and what she does, and what we worked out together with Mandy is she's playing the beat of entirely different steps. She starts off with like kind of jazz and a cha-cha, and then it goes into swing and something closer to Fred and Ginger, and then into bossa nova, and then into polka. And these are radically different rhythms, but she's just playing with the form, and Chuck and Janice are responding in kind, but she's conducting us from behind the set, and enjoying those. Because what we learn, and I don't want to give too many spoilers, is that something in the soul of the film is that we all contain multitudes. And that our internal worlds contain greater depth and range than the external world would like to give us. And Chuck looks like an accountant, but he was a dancer as a boy, and he was taught by his grandparents, his grandmother particularly, and then at high school. And that he rediscovers that dancer in himself. So we were trying to understand what the influences might be, that he would have gone through all of this training. He'd polka and bossa nova and swing. Stephen King is very specific about moonwalking. So we had a whole moonwalk day. And
I was thinking about asking you if you can moonwalk, but I feel like you can.
Wait till you see the movie.
I feel like I've seen videos of you dance. You can definitely moonwalk.
I'm enthusiastic in my expression.
That's all that's
leave
necessary.
The judgment to others.
The dance is to come from a place of joy, and that's all you need.
I do love it, and it was, as Mike said, it was about what creates the most joy, but also what expresses the most joy. And it's really interesting. I think I've never met a single person on this planet who doesn't love dancing. Maybe they need a little encouragement. Maybe they need to lose a self-consciousness or an inhibition. But ultimately, everyone wants to dance. It's like the freest expression of.
It's interesting because even babies dance.
Yeah.
So it's almost like it's a totally primal instinct.
Yeah.
I'm always like, why do babies dance? You know, I think about that a lot.
It is true, though. It's baked into all of us to a degree. All right, Mike, I'm coming back your way for some story structure questions. There was something in particular I'd read in our press notes that kind of caught my eye. You mentioned there were other opportunities within that structure to play even more and to make visual and thematic connections between these three chapters that you can't in a book. Can you give me some specific examples of things you did in the movie that you can't in the book?
Well, it's one of the great privileges of visual storytelling. You know, calling back cues that will create. And how do I do this without spoiling? Yeah. You know, it's really challenging. But yeah, how sometimes the most fleeting glance at something can sear itself into our memory and into our imagination. And it can plant something in us that we will revisit when the tumblers connect in just the right way decades later. And it can transport us. It can take us back. There was a chance to do more of that than King was already doing in the story, in this, and it turned into an incredible opportunity for myself and Eben Bolter, our director of photography, to really create more of a tapestry. And I can't really talk about it more than that, I think, without getting into danger zone. But
I think maybe because I can say I think I'm not the only actor who plays Chuck.
Yeah.
In the film, but our piece. So the piece with me and Annalise was the first week of shooting, and there were things that happened, the magic of the accident, when we were shooting, that then Mike and Mandy took on with some of the other Chucks, which was really, I found really joyful, to have that sort of even physical things that happened, and Mandy could go, I'm going to tell another Chuck that might be a signature move.
I can't wait to see the movie. I'm losing my mind with the anticipation right now. Mike, a question about making this film independently, because I feel like from an outsider's perspective, like I look at you as a filmmaker and I'm like, if he wants to make Life of Chuck with a studio, someone's going to come run in, give him a budget and let him make it with all the tools and resources in the world. You decided to produce this film independently and you're here at the film festival selling it. Why did that feel like it would best serve the version of the story you wanted to tell?
One of the things that I recognized very early was that this story is very unusual, and sometimes it can be more of a challenge to lead people to water on a story that isn't as easily comparable to something that is immediately in their past.
I have so much to say about that.
Yeah, it's a reality of our business, and fortunately, my producer Trevor Macy recognized the same thing. And said, we can try to take this around town and sell it, and we can try to talk to people about what it will be, knowing it'll likely have to change. Or we could make it and show them what it is and hope that that connects with people in a way that lets the movie remain what it wants to be. That makes it more challenging because you have less resources, you have less support. Though in our case, we were able to make the movie at a time when otherwise we would not have, specifically because of that, because we were completely independent. It's my first time doing an independent movie in many years, and I forgot how much I love the intense camaraderie and invention and the forced creativity that kind of comes from that. Walking onto set and looking around and realizing everybody's there for the same reason. And it's a beautiful thing.
When you build a filmmaking family like you and everyone has, I feel like it's got to be the best feeling in the world to make it that way. I teased a really big question for you based on something you said in the notes. Here it is now. You said that after you read the novella, you emailed Stephen King that day and you said, if I could have a crack at this story, it might be the best movie I'll ever make. Now, having finished it, do you feel that way?
Yeah, I do. And I felt that way while we were shooting it too. I felt that way the end of the first week. We spent 4 days filming. The dance was first, which is a confident way to start an independent film. But for all the reasons you don't control, that's how it lands. And we watched this happen for 4 straight days. And I've watched a lot of things happen for many days on a movie. It takes forever to make a movie. But it's the first time in my life that I loved what was on the monitor just as much. In fact, more on the last take that we did 4 days in. And I knew that there was something magical happening. And when that little movie ended, we got to make 2 more that made me feel exactly the same way. And when Chiwetel and Karen came on set and we were suddenly making a story that on the surface might not feel connected to the experience we had that first week, I had the same feeling. And it stayed with me all the way to the end, watching Benjamin Pajak and Mark Hamill and Mia Sara. And so, yeah, I really like to hope they're going to let me keep making movies after this. But if this was it, that would be okay with me. So, yeah.
I appreciate how beautiful that sentiment is, but never stop. Never stop in the film format and the series structure either. I need more of your stories in my life. Seriously. I have a big group question that I wanted to wrap up, at least the Life of Chuck portion of our conversation on. So you brought this up a little bit, the idea of expressing joy through dancing. And there's like a big old quote. I'll just read it for people very quickly. You said, I hope the movie helps viewers look at our world today and encourages them to sometimes put down the briefcase and let yourself dance. Whatever that means to you, whatever kind of expression joy dancing represents, painting, being with family, writing, being athletic, all these different ways that we can let our hearts out. Feels important to emphasize this. Can you each tell me a way that you let your heart out beyond just making movies?
Wow. I mean, dancing is definitely one of them. Like, I have always loved, I don't know, it's like, who doesn't love dancing? So whenever I get the chance. But I think probably the first thing I thought of when you said it was like, and it's a kind of nerdy thing to say, I love running. I love to run. For me, I find the release of running incredibly cathartic and therapeutic. It's just me and running outside, running in the world. It's just my own body and my own head, and away from, because we're so tethered to technology, we're so attached to information and our phones and our computers and stuff, and it's just my own feet and my own heart and my own imagination, and I'm just running in space. Again, I think it's a thing. Babies love running.
And why?
Why?
This is the big question.
Another big question.
I think about that a lot as well.
Yeah, and I hope I haven't lost that. So yeah, that's how I let my heart out.
Gonna make me appreciate my next run even more now. Anyone else have an example?
I think that thing that you were saying about that disconnect from technology is like so important, and it's a great moment actually in this story. You know, when because there's so many sort of the sort of technology. It's like the machine stops in a way. You know, the technology kind of starts to sort of stop working, and people have to disconnect from that side of their lives, and I feel like that's where the magic can happen, I think, for us in the sort of modern world, you know, when you disconnect from technology and obviously the joy that you have of being with those you love and family, and that's, you know, where you can really sort of sing, I think.
I always hesitate to answer these questions because I don't have any hobbies other than making films and stuff like that, or like
It's not a hobby.
That's I suppose
It does still count. Part of the reason why I really wanted to ask this question too is because like my whole life is watching and talking about movies, and sometimes I have to force myself like, no, think about some of the
Something
other
else,
things you
yeah.
do, which isn't very much, admittedly.
I like have this natural tendency to zone out a lot in my life, and I quite like doing that. So I let my imagination just sort of like go wherever it wants to go, but where it goes is like trying to think of ideas for films. So I come back to it, but there's something, I think it's my version of meditation or something, and it feels like energy preservation at the same time as maybe being creative.
I get it. Literally, anytime someone's like, do you watch movies for fun? I'm like, yes, I do. But then if I like it enough, I'll turn it into work. So I guess I don't. But I
Right,
do,
yeah.
because it's baked into me to watch it for
Yeah.
fun. I don't know.
I would add, would you agree with this? Watching elite athletes is like a deep pleasure. Like watching a great soccer team, football team, or watching tennis players, or watching the Olympics. That for me, I do spend. Yeah, just a confession. I spend a lot of time watching great tennis players play tennis and watching great football players play football. I should specify football. By football, I mean soccer. I don't mean
It's the start of the NFL season.
I know, but it's also the start of the Premiership. Let's not go there. But yeah, I find there's like a kind of majesty in elite athletic performance when you watch a great soccer player or a great tennis player or a great athlete. It's just like watching poetry in motion.
How do you feel watching running? Does it combine all
It
of
does.
those?
Yeah. Like the big track meets at the big track races at the Olympics, 100 meters, 200 meters, 400, 800, 1500. I will cry. I just sit and watch and cry at the magnificence of these people being the best at what they do. Yeah.
Makes all the sense in the world. Got anything to take us home on this question?
Yeah, it's unfortunate because coming after Tom, the one that I was going to say was walking. So basically what he does, only much lazier. But for the same reasons. But I'm like, right, doing that quickly. That sounds different and better for your body. But no, I think besides, I adore walking, and it's become a major part of my life and self. But I think beyond that, I would say piano. And I have
I didn't know you played the piano.
yeah, I don't play wonderfully,
that
but
one
I
under
love
wraps.
it. Yeah. And so when I see people playing piano magnificently, it always I have that feeling like when you're watching runners, where I'm just like, I love what they're doing, and I love where they are and what they're finding, and I feel a pull to that. Yeah.
Beautiful answer.
I do that too. I do have one hobby. I just want you to know I had a hobby.
What is? Do you play piano?
I play the piano, not very well,
Okay.
but it's a hobby, which was the main
I'll take
thing
that.
I was trying to get across.
I'll take
here.
that. Eventually, I'll think. My new hobby is hummingbirds.
Well, looking at them.
Like, I got a feeder, and then I got a little hand feeder, and I stand outside, and it sits on my finger, and it sips out of the feeder in my hand.
That's amazing.
It's the most
Oh, that's
magical thing in the world. That's my
incredible.
new hobby. I have to ask one more question that is unrelated. I'm really curious to see the reaction to this. I have to ask a Marvel question.
Yeah.
I was just curious to see who got most nervous. Tom, it's coming to you. Because I could literally ask any of you a Marvel question. Our team is very, very excited about Loki. They want more. I know you don't know if there's a season 3, and I know even if you did know, you couldn't tell me. So I'm going to ask you a 2-part question. If it ends with season 2, what is it about the season 2 storyline that you think will give you closure? But then if it gets to continue, what is something you've only scratched the surface of with that character in season 2 you'd most look forward to doing in season 3 more?
Great question. The first part, I mean, when we conceived of Loki as a show, we knew we were going to do something different and something separate from everything else I had done before that. And that was very exciting, but also with great respect for those things that had come before. The 3 Thor movies and the Avengers movies that I was in. And we were creating this world of the TVA, an institution that claims to govern the order of time. And we knew, I think we wanted to confront this anti-hero with himself. And it was the whole 12 episodes or 2 seasons, our theme was going to be identity and self-discovery, and taking that kind of iconic line from Avengers, I'm Loki of Asgard, I'm burdened with glorious purpose, and investigating that. What is purpose? And how is it possible to redefine, reinvestigate, rediscover, or reinvent his sense of purpose? And where we ended at the end of season 2 of Loki, I really feel like the confrontation, the spiritual confrontation was complete. And he understood through the gift of his connections with Mobius and Sylvie and his friends at the TVA that sometimes purpose is more burden than glory, and he gives himself for his friends. And through that there's a kind of closure, and that the broken soul that he started with in the very first Thor movie is healed, because he's always been a character who doesn't belong. And finally, he finds a place to belong and people to belong to. So I feel very happy with the conclusion of that. In terms of scratching the surface, I mean, he's a character who's been around for almost 3,000 years, and he represents unpredictability and boundary crossing and disruption and the question mark. So I feel like if I ever got a chance to play the character again, there's 1,000 things I haven't done. He's constantly changing.
Limitless
As are we all.
possibilities.
Yeah.
That is true. That is true. I'm not changing. I've been a big fan of Life of Chuck since the day I read that story. I am not wavering from it being my most anticipated film of the festival. I cannot wait to see it tonight. Thank you for sharing some of your
Thank you.
experience with us, and huge congratulations on the movie.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you. Thank you.